Got it. Okay, just let me record. Okay, Krishna, it's all yours.
Okay, welcome one and all to Poetry and Prose. Poetry and Prose founded by Geeta Mahabir. Since I joined this group, I drew up a list of some 73 persons who looked in, participated in this program. The idea of the author of the month was raised by someone, was it Moti?
Motilal.
Was it Moti? Yeah.
Yes,
and so we celebrate the work of writers through this aspect. It alternates with the open mic segment. So far, for 2023, we have featured Haricharan Narayan, Frank Mohan, Seeta Shah, Althea Romeo Mark, Safia Baksh Hussain, Andre Babu, and Darren Despot. For the month of September 2023, the spotlight is on Geeta Outar-Sirjoo. Now, who is Geeta Outar-Sirjoo? An interview. Outar? Outar?
Yeah.
Geeta Outar-Sirjoo. Thank you. Interview of the writer by Vishnu Gosain is coming up. So that should reveal quite a lot about her. For those who are meeting the name for the first time, like myself, you can Google the name. Nowadays, everything is on your fingertips, the digital age. I Googled and I saw plentytalent.com, a website showcasing Caribbean talent that Geeta is Ghanaian born and she migrated to TNT at an early age. She's a businesswoman turned writer. And I don't want to steal any of Vishnu's forthcoming thunder with their writer. So I'll just say on this program, we have members reading from the works of Geeta, and time permitting, we'll have Geeta herself reading, delighting us with her voice. I especially welcome the return of prodigal daughters, two of our established readers, Natasha Gray and Leslie Ann Bechtel. So nice to see you all. So now I introduce Vishnu Gosain. Vishnu needs a little introduction. He's one of the leading writers of Trinidad and Tobago, having written The Coming of Lights and The 12 O'Clock Man. He also writes a number of short stories and poems. Vishnu, I should say, is in mourning over the loss of one of his best friends, a writer friend, Michael Anthony, who I understand used to spend a lot of time at the home of Vishnu. Perhaps he could say something on that. But from now on, Vishnu, the floor is yours, and you and Geeta can take over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello. I'm not getting on.
We need some help here. We have some technical issues. Are you on now?
No, I'm not seeing my.
I'm not seeing you. Hearing you, but not
Vishnu,
seeing.
you have to turn on your camera.
You mean it's as simple as that, Gush? Camera, Vish. Start video. Start
Okay.
video.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. All right. To look now. Hello?
Yes, we're seeing you. We're hearing it.
Okay, fine. All right, so welcome Geeta ji, Poetry and Prose. And we are having a chat about your writing. Achilles Geeta, Outar-Sirjoo. I will say Miss Geeta as we go along. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great, great. So Geeta ji, tell us something about your early writing, what actually started you off into writing, not necessarily into the novel and all that, but somewhere along the line, what actually made you click? Anything?
My children, I would say. When my first child was about 5 years old, that would be around 1995, 96, thereabout, I started writing stories to teach good morals. And from doing so, I lent my stories to other parents. And that encouraged me to go on writing. And that's how writing started for me.
So you have been sharing your stories with parents and children and things like that. And somewhere along the line, you got more interested in writing. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Where actually did this take place? I suppose you had a little setting or something in the community encourage you to do that?
Yes, the library is one place, and another is I was a scout leader, assistant scout leader, I should say, in Crystal Stream, in Diego Martin Crystal Streams primary school, and
Trinidad.
in Trinidad, yeah. And that's it. Most of my writing happened in Trinidad. That's where it really started. But I think it was inspired by my father, because my father taught us the same way. He would tell us stories to bring out good moral values so that we could learn well, we could understand and learn well. And I think that was rooted in me, and I practice it with my children. And from there, it's all started. However, fortunate disaster, I don't know if I should jump ahead to fortunate disaster. That was a dream. And that is where, that is when I started publishing.
Okay, we will come out to fortunate disaster. So you think where you lived in Crystal Stream, Diego Martin, the setting there, in a sense, encouraged. Setting by setting, I mean, not only place, but people, the people in the community. Were you able to pick out stories affecting the people, or you think they would like to hear, and that made you write a little bit to tell them the story, something like that? How did it go?
Yes. There were characters in the community that I did not want to see my children go in that direction. So most of the time, I will point out those characters in the community and incidents that happen in the community, so that I could, guide them on a different path, things I don't want them to do.
So are you saying in a sense that to every story you might have written, there is a moral tale to it, a little moral value storyline?
Yes.
Teachable?
Yes, teachable. Yeah, that's why parents borrow them.
You think you want a story, but tell us what you mean by moral value kind of thing, something around it. Anything at all, right from wrong, good from bad, something like that?
Yeah, right from wrong. Mm-hmm. Yes, I would think so. For instance, I hope I'm not offending anyone here, but cigarette smoking is a thing that I have no tolerance for. And that is one of the things that I insisted on. I told a lot of stories on that. And even today, I'm still doing it to adults and children alike.
Okay, I'll jump the gun a little bit. So we could have about 25 minutes, I think, Chris, something like that. All right, so you have written about 4 books, 4 published books,
Yes, I have.
3 novels, A Fortunate Disaster, Castles in the Sky, A Rainbow in the North, and Lone Survivor. It's a short story as a single unit. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Lone Survivor, that is.
Are these stories like set in one place? I am trying to say to you that I'm wondering if where you live, since you talk about living in Crystal Stream, if where you live, something about the society there, that big setting there, whether it is Trinidad, whether it is India, whether it is Guyana, wherever it is, if you could tell us something about how that setting, that place, with the people there, whether they were poor, whether they were rich, whether they were ambitious, lack of ambition, whether it was seaside people, how do these settings, and I'm saying settings in a sense, urge you on to write a story or stories, as the case would be? We can take one story. Maybe if you want to look at, or if you want to look at, say, Lone Survivor, you choose.
Okay, yes, I will choose Lone Survivor, because Lone Survivor is set in Guyana, in the community where I grew up. And poverty was very prevalent then. I mean, it still is somewhat, but not as bad as then. And children had to leave school at an early age to seek work in order to survive. In Lone Survivor, there were 3 young boys that went out to seek money to have a Christmas, to have food for Christmas. But only one from those 3 knew school, was going to school. So let's say in 10 young children, only 1 may get an opportunity to go to school back then. And poverty is one of the things that inspired most of my stories, because not really inspired, but it's a big part of my story, because I want to encourage young ones to seek an education, no matter how hard the struggle is, to seek an education, because an education is the only thing that will get you out of poverty.
Okay, well, we have the same experience in Trinidad. How do these, you said there were 3 little boys.
Yeah.
Just to play the story a little bit, and since that's going to bring out some of the moral values or the strengths or weaknesses of your characters, how do these 3 little boys, in a sense, try to combat poverty or try to uplift themselves in a sense? Because in a sense, we are saying, if you are poor over there, listen, man, this is one way you can help yourself. What happens in the story? We could discuss the story to an extent, since we don't have the whole day to do it, but we could do a little piece of the story. How do these boys try to escape their poverty, escape that way of life into something else?
By working hard and getting the assistance of those who are doing a little better in the community. For instance, Jack Prasad, he was a captain. And even though he had stopped for the year, he had closed off going to the ocean for the rest of the year, he still went out with these young boys in order to help them, because in a poor community, you help each other. For instance, if one person is planting, let's say we're planting garden, and one neighbor plants bygone, and the next one plants bhaji, they would exchange. And that community spirit, which still exists today, and which I admire a lot. Since I'm here for the past year, I'm here, I'm seeing that it is still existing. And that is how they help each other. So Jack went back to the sea to help these young ones and the entire home circle to have a good Christmas, help them to have a good Christmas. That was the idea.
So you think Jack is sort of father figure to these little boys or to those in the community?
Yes, in the community, even now, all the older ones are always uncle, auntie, you know, the respect for the older ones, older folks are there. So the boys will always have had that kind of respect for Jack. And because of that bond that Jack felt towards them, that he agreed to do what he did.
Okay. And I suppose Jack would have been the owner of a large boat or some such thing, and he would have employed boys to work with him on the ship or the boat.
Yes,
Okay.
because he was older and he was in a better place. But I mean, he had much more than them. Poverty didn't affect him that much.
So Lone Survivor, I guess, is available both across Guyana and Trinidad on the net and things like that. Would you say this for young people, or just anybody could read it and gather something from it?
Anybody could read it and gather something, but mostly I've targeted the young people because it would be in schools over here, because the Ministry of Education over here has approved all 4 of my books.
That's great.
They haven't reached theirs yet, but it has been approved. So I'm waiting for the movement.
Good. So that's setting on the land. You said something that one of your books is a dream. You want to tell us about the dream a little bit? It's a strange thing to dream a whole book.
A whole book, isn't it? Yeah. Fortunate Disaster. That's my first novel.
Okay.
That started, January mornings are very cold in Diego Martin, where I live, mostly to the Blue Basin area. That place is very cold on a January morning. And it was a January morning that I woke up to send my children to school, to prepare them for school. But it was so cold that I decided to spend 5 minutes again and then. I wasn't in a hurry to get up. And as I went back to sleep, I dreamt that entire story. But I woke up in a hustle and I sent them off to school and not thinking anything, not even remembering, until that what happened on a Monday morning. And on the Wednesday, I remembered every detail of that story. And that all the memory keep coming back many days after that. And it was so profound that I had to start writing it on paper. I had no intention of publishing, but then I gave my manuscript to a few people and they read it and they encouraged me to get it published. And that's how I started publishing. I'm sorry I did not keep all my little stories from back then.
I know Naipaul set part of a house of Mr. Biswas somewhere in Diego Martin there. Poor fellas died, etc. Ask him how cold it's up there. All right,
yes,
so we have.
It was cold until so many houses started to take over the forested area.
So, Fortunate Disaster. Okay.
Yeah, that's Fortunate Disaster.
But okay, so in Lone Survivor, you're concerned with the society in which you live there, Annandale, and the little boy is struggling to go to school, can't go to school, must go in the sea and make a living.
Yeah.
In this one, how about castles in the sky? Are you concerned with castles in the sky? About, I mean, I'm really wanting to know if you are writing fantasy stories or if you are writing stories based on your experiences or experience of other people in society, whether it's Guyana, whether it's Trinidad, whether it's India, whether it's Barbados, where?
Both. It is all my stories are inspired by true events. Castles in the Sky was inspired by someone very close to me, and how he struggled through poverty. And today he has a big empire in front of him. In his early days, when those days was Common Entrance, and when he wrote Common Entrance, he passed for a very prestige school. But he had to travel distance, a long distance. And on the weekends, he would catch fish and birds and sell in the market. And fish and crab and sell in the market. And that is where he got his money, his passage to go to school. And he would wear one pants. I could remember him wearing one short pants for three years straight. And he struggled throughout life. Peer pressure wasn't a problem for him, even though he was heckled a lot. He was harassed by his peers and all of that. And he struggled all through that. He went to Venezuela. He worked in a gold mine. He came back to Guyana. He worked. He did night studies, and he got himself a language degree. And he worked in an embassy where he did translations, and he worked himself up to today. He's an import-export businessman. And that was one of the persons that inspired Castles in the Sky, along with the other struggles he had, but he overcome.
So is it a positive book in that sense, in that the person has struggled in the beginning and didn't collapse, but continued working and working? And
yes, yes, it's a positive book, because back then also this arranged marriage thing was a big thing here. He was in an arranged marriage that went bad, and then traveling, he found love somewhere else. He divorced and remarried, and now he's quite happy.
yes, we always travel and find love somewhere else. And that's
Yes.
whatever you in the land of the snow, you still find love somewhere.
Somewhere.
But Geeta ji, you seem to be a lot concerned about the society you live in. Is that right? Do you think the work of a writer is? Do you think the work of a writer is to speak out about the society that he or she lives in? I mean, to estimate statements.
Yes, and even though I'm not writing about the issues presently that I'm seeing, I'm very vocal about it in different forums.
Okay.
Yeah, environmental especially.
In your home country, I would think.
In my home country, yeah.
Good. And I think the government know that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. All right.
I have to focus on them to get things done.
Yes, that's a good thing. Tell me something. What might be your work habits? We are running against time. We can have about 5 minutes again for the most. What might be your work habits in getting up late, early, jotting notes, whatever you want to tell us, you want to share with people, with us, with Krishna, with
Okay. Well, my day job starts from 9:30 to 3 o'clock. And my writing period is from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning. And, and that's how I do it almost every day. Unless I'm extremely tired, then I take an entire night. But muscle memory always wake me up at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
2 a.m. I'm talking about.
2 a.m. That's when I want to. And you want to.
Yes.
I suppose writers have different habits in doing things.
Yeah, I think so too. But morning hours is when the creative juices flow.
All right. So I think I could bring this a small pause, a small close, and we have other parts of the program to continue. So Geeta Outar-Sirjoo, the author of 14 Disaster, Castles in the Sky, A Rainbow in the North, and The Lone Survivor. Thank you very much for being on Poetry and Prose. We enjoyed your say.
May I just add one other thing to the interview? Rainbow in the North is being produced as a television series in Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us more. We'll wait to see it on the big screen. Thank you,
Wait
Geeta.
and see it on the big screen. Thank you all for having me.
Okay, Chris, over to you. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. Vish, thank you, Geeta, for giving us an idea of your evolution as a writer, how you move from the didactic part, using stories to teach morals, how you were inspired by your father, the element of oral tradition in your work, and how you charted a whole novel based on a dream. That was fantastic. And that this is not all to you, that your works have the element of realism in them, as in Castles, where you base your book on the experiences of people you know, people who have come close to you. And most of all, that discipline as a writer. Yes, we as writers know that we have to be disciplined and we have to find our moments that suit us best, the moments that suit us best. I myself like to write when the household is asleep, snoring in bed. And that's when I come out and I go to the drawing room, put on the little lights, and I open the computer and I start. Right. Thank you so much. So if there are persons who would like to respond to that interview, feel free. I'll give you some time. Members, Arti, anybody wants to say something?
It was very interesting hearing how it came from a dream to a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Welcome.
Arti?
It even amazed me. So
Arti wanted to say something.
Yes. There is a lot more that we would like to do from the writer, of course. But, you know, it is about reading everything that she has written, so then we can understand her better. Because in the writing has more of what it is all about. So I look forward to reading her work. She's a new name for us, and I didn't see her books in the stores. So maybe we will get acquainted with her work now.
Okay. All right. That is Arti saying, let's get on with the program.
Yes.
Okay, so we go to Cynthia Birch, and Cynthia will be reading from Castles in the Sky. Cynthia is an educator, champion of the English language. She's ready, all set to proofread the anthology, upcoming anthology of the group, Poetry and Prose. She has 2 handbooks for people interested in the knots of the English language, what we say and what we write. Over to you, Cynthia.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to read something by Geeta Outar-Sirjoo. And this is a bit from Castles in the Sky. An avalanche of rocks came tumbling down the slope again like volcanoes spewing lava in solid form. Luckily, the duo was shielded from the destruction. Clouds of dust swirled upwards as rocks reached the bottom of the cave. The blanket of dust finally allowed them to analyze their situation. A huge boulder blocked the only exit from the smaller cave that was created. Behind them was a short incline, and below, just a few feet away, was the immeasurable depth of uninviting water. Ravi's assessment did not look good. He turned towards Han, and his shoulders dropped in gloom. His face told of helplessness, and his voice trembled with fear. This is the end, mi amigo. We are done for. We are trapped. Ravi took his flashlight and searched frantically. His heart was racing while his breathing came faster. Han realized he was hyperventilating. He held Ravi by his shoulders and looked him in the eyes. We will make it, mi compañero. You hear me? We will make it out of here. Han swallowed hard on the lump of fear in his throat and hoped his words did not sound as weak as he felt. Hold on to your will, mi amigo. Where there's a will, there's a way. The two friends searched the enclosure carefully, looking for a way out. In the darkness, the only sounds in the cryptic stillness were their own raspy breathing. The diminishing oxygen level and added pollution from nitroglycerin caused a breathing problem. Exhaustion came easily, and they relinquished their search after a while. Their bodies began to feel weak. They could not tell how long they had been trapped in that dark, abysmal place. They began sleeping for long periods, maybe for days at a time, or so it seemed. Awoken by hunger again, Ravi lay on the cold, hard ground, a spot he had grown accustomed to. Even the ground seemed to take the form of his body. He looked around for any other life form apart from Han. Not even the telltale sign of a bat could be seen or heard. Ravi's body felt like that of an 80-year-old man. Realizing the nightmare was very much real, he began to feel depressed. He allowed his tears to flow freely, hoping the heaviness in his heart would go away. Ravi thought of his ill father, and his words echoed in his mind. Son, you do not have to do this. If we stay together, things will change. His father pleaded with them not to leave their homeland. But Daddy, you're the one who told me. Sorry, I lost it. You are the one who told me, let not your sentiments take center stage in your decision making, or a failure you will be. Ravi's sobs were even heavier as he recalled that conversation with his dad, remembering his condition when he left him standing there with his mother and his grandmother, looking at him and his brother leaving. At last he gave in and braced for the inevitable, preparing himself for death. Han allowed Ravi to cry to his heart's content without interruption. Meanwhile, he was busy with his own investigation. On the other side of the cave, Han had been feeling water trickling down for some time. Casting his light, he noticed that the water had charted a channel on the face of the wall in a constant flow. But where was it going? The traces led to the scary pool below, but the water level was not rising any higher. There had to be an overflow. Or was there an underflow? Han shivered as he thought of investigating an underflow. That meant he would have to get into that unpredictable water. For all years of coming to the mine, he had never ventured into that water. He became hyped with renewed energy. He was too busy to notice that Ravi was speaking to him. Strapping dynamite to himself, Ravi said, Han, I prefer to save myself from this prolonged agony. We both know the outcome of this situation. The authorities would not come looking for us in an illegal mine. And by the time our loved ones get the news, we would be gone far beyond yonder. Han felt a jerk on his shoulders, seemingly from a third person in the cave, and that brought his attention to Ravi. He flashed his light to see Ravi, detonator in hand, ready to make connection to blow the stick of dynamite strapped to his chest. Han jumped up, dealt a slap across his face, and backhanded him twice more. He held Ravi by his shoulders and shook him as he shouted, "We will get out of here alive, you hear me? We have to survive. No ifs and no buts." Taking a deep breath, he continued, "You will not kill yourself. Suicide is for cowards. A coward you are not. Do you hear me?" He allowed that to sink in before speaking calmly. "Mi amigo, we will get out of here. As long as there is a way out, we will find it." Something in his tone convinced Ravi that everything would be all right. Then Ravi heard his father's voice. It was the exact words said to him on the day he left for Venezuela. Let not your sentiments take center stage in your decision making, for a failure you'll be. It was as if his father was right there speaking words of encouragement. That's it up to now.
Thank you, Cynthia,
You're welcome.
for that reading. That nightmarish situation where these Ravi and Han are trapped in an illegal mine, correct, Geeta? Yeah. And Ravi is getting desperate because there's no way out. There's only one way out. And that is to blow himself to smithereens, Peter.
Yes,
What?
being a young man, that was his thought.
They have me thinking about these fundamentalists, you know, girl. when you say he strapped himself with this dynamite. That's a terrible image again. Anyhow, so we go on to Shahira to get the more of this story. So Shahira is a regular to Poetry and Prose. She was tried at hosting some sessions and she did very well in that task. She's a champion of a cause, and she is very particular about how she enunciates words. Shahira, it's all
Yes.
yours now.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction.
You're welcome, Shahira.
Jody was teaching Gabby the same things she saw growing up. Perhaps Jody's hope was that Ravi would follow suit and kill himself like Jerry. But his days in the Sierra Imataka Mountains taught him the value of life. He fought to survive, and he did. He never forgot Han's words. He was no coward. Suicide was for cowards. Jody encouraged Gabby to ask for unnecessary things, like an expensive handbag or high-heeled shoes, and once, even a belly dancer's belt. Sometimes she did that just to start a fight with Ravi, because she knew he would refuse to give Gabby such things at her age. Besides knowing the struggles of not having the basic things in life, he did not encourage the things that would mold Gabby to be a brat. Jody would then use that against him, telling Gabby, "Your father does not love you. If he did, He would shower you with gifts and give you the shoes you asked for. After all, he is a wealthy man. I am pretty sure he buys gifts for his women, but he refuses to buy for you. Poor Gabby felt torn. She did not understand what was happening in the adult world. Her young mind saw her mother pulling to one side and her father to the other, leaving her in the middle. At that tender age, she started building a mental wall around herself for protection. In Jodie's novelty world, Kelly never taught her to be a team player because she never was. Kelly taught her to demand the things she wanted, the things that Jerry sacrificed his life to give. Eventually, both the verbal and physical abuse was very prominent, and Jodie observed well. Jodie was a pro at the verbal abuse and was on the brink of starting the physical abuse with Ravi. Do not be a fool and tolerate that sort of behavior, Viking had said to him. As time passed, Kelly's damages manifested in Jodie. She was exhibiting sociopathic traits, but in their society, where domestic unrest was prevalent, everyone thought it was just a woman's scorn, or Ravi must have done something for her to behave like that. No one paid attention enough to recognize that mental issues were popping its head up in Jodie. Left without treatment, Jodie's condition escalated. Kelly's teachings were a fantasy world, and the fantasies were not manifesting, and that affected Jodie immensely. Jodie could not pull a string and control Ravi. He was not a puppet, and she was not a puppeteer. Jodie often accused him of infidelity. She was also covering her own tracks. He reflected on the straw that broke the camel's back. His memory vault opened up, and he reflected on the straw that broke the camel's back, and their marriage was only 2 years old. Ravi worked during the day as a teacher. He studied nightly at the University of Guyana. He got a degree in language, which earned him a job as an interpreter at the Venezuelan embassy. Financially, his position was better. He took a huge loan and built Jodie her dream house. Jodie was still not happy. Their relationship had gotten worse. The tension was way past boiling point. Every encounter was a new fight. He often asked her, "What is hurting you so badly, Jodie, that you cannot see the good in anything or anyone?" And that was always the catalyst of a new quarrel. It was with that tension that the business idea was born. Ravi decided to put it into action. That way he would be away for weeks at a time and would not have to deal with Jodie's constant nagging. He invested in a truck to transport fuel through the interior of Guyana to Lethal, the border closer to Brazil. That later became a flourishing business, and Jodie liked the idea very much. She had all the freedom she wanted. Kian had returned from the United States to stay for a while. With arrangements made, truck loaded, and the team in place, Ravi decided to leave at dawn on that fateful August morning for his first trip to Lytham. 3 hours later, they left civilization behind and headed for the open dirt road that would take them to their destination. They drove for the entire day. The weather was great except for a few sprinkles along the way. The month of August was usually like that, dry and breezy with just a sprinkle where the humidity had built. There was something in the air around that time of year that nudged at the adventure of an audacious soul. Sunset brought them to the heart of the Rupununi Savannah, a majestic place richly impregnated with flora and fauna. The last ray of sunshine disappeared behind the southwesterly mountain range just as they were setting up camp. A feeling of wild freedom gripped Ravi. He felt like stripping naked and running wild. He restrained himself lest his companions should think he was having a mental breakdown. But they too were feeling the independence offered in this untouched land that man was yet to discover. His stride had a different kind of boldness as they moved about. Like professional cowboys, they helped themselves to baked beans and coffee. Maybe they would tell bonfire stories or tell tales from the wild, wild west. Suddenly, Ravi was distracted by the change in the skyline. The colors in the northeasterly range over the Pakariyama Mountains began to change from intense darkness to a soft glow of fire in the sky. Fellas, we have a full moon tonight? His question was answered before his companions could tell. The first arch of the huge ball peeped over the mountain as if to make sure it was safe to venture. All clear. The huge orange ball began to chase the darkness away, leaving in its wake a silvery brightness that bathed the open plain in a natural scenic beauty, a poet's paradise on a romantic night. Ravi was always a sucker for Mother Nature's purest. He left the two men and ventured for a short walk. He stood silently, drinking in the exhilarating liveliness, one that Jody had snatched from him a long time ago. He felt a renewal in his spirit and wished this night would never end. He was sure this was the closest to heaven he could experience while on earth. The huge ball rose quickly, transforming the seemingly harsh, untamed, and untouched terrain with its brilliance. The growling sound of a jaguar announced his claim. Ravi took a step backwards. The light from above cast a false look of wetness on the open space. A cool breeze blew softly, enough to cause the tumbleweeds to roll again. Ravi smiled as he observed the numerous clumps of tumbleweeds that seemed to play a secret game of cat and mouse with the deceitful rivulets, reminding him of watery mirages on a dry summer road. Ravi made up a bed in the open air. The thick night's dew did not matter. He was not going to miss just what God had to offer, this picturesque sight that unfolded with every breath. He was afraid to close his eyes in case he missed something, but sometime during the night he fell asleep with a peace he had not felt in ages. Sorry was too simple a word to describe his disappointment when he left that business behind to start a new one. But what Ravi had gained could not be compared. The Rupununi Savannah had engraved in his heart a permanent picture along with a renewed spirit that no one could take from him. In the years of continuing marital trials, that was the place he escaped to, if only in his mind. That was where peace existed for him. That was the place which offered him absolute tranquility and a fervent desire to return one day. Ravi had dug himself into some deep depths. He stayed with the Venezuelan embassy until his depths were cleared. He then thought of a change of atmosphere. It was a hard decision for Jody to make. That would mean leaving her secret rendezvous with Kian, but surprisingly, Jody agreed with his plans to spend some time in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago offered some peace and happiness to them both. Maybe it was the change in atmosphere. Maybe it was the societal change. Whatever it was, Ravi was grateful. He was most grateful that Kelly wasn't around to influence her daughter anymore. Out of her regular environment, Jody was a different person. That was when Ravi realized that was probably she suffering from some sort of mental disorder. Maybe personality disorder. He thought maybe she was just fascinated with their new way of life and left it as that. She was not nagging, and for a short while, she was pleasant to be around. So why complain? To others, she was busy creating an impression, one that mattered only to her. Jody observed women thriving in their independence while balancing the duties of a mother and a wife at the same time, totally different from what her mother told her. At first, she thought it was a superwoman kind of thing to do, and she couldn't do it. But she admired the confidence she saw in the woman. She had one less task than the average woman. She had no child to take care of. With that motivation, she started working and was surprised how much she liked it. She mostly liked the idea of dressing up and going out every day, not just dressing up and staying home. Jody got herself a job as a salesperson. Her knowledge of makeup paid off when she was giving the cosmetics counter to manage at a department store. She handled very well. She felt needed when people asked her opinion on makeup. Confidently, she would advise. She enjoyed her job. Kelly was not around to influence her every move. And the true Jody was a nice person. For the first time, she and Ravi lived and enjoyed each other as a married couple. Their quarrels were less frequent. Ravi noticed how much she had matured and thought there was a possible survival for their marriage. Then, Kelly visited her daughter and all hell broke loose. Her mother brought back memories of her old life, and Jody soon realized how much she missed that. The quarrels between Ravi and herself restarted at an extra pace, as if trying to make up for the lost time. Kelly pointed out all the negatives. You have a husband, Jody, so why do you have to work? It is his responsibility to provide for you. Kelly told her of all the gossip happening in the neighborhood back home. Jody started craving their regular gatherings of the pampering convention. She tried to convince Ravi to return to Guyana, but upon his reluctance, Jody reverted to her old self. When Kelly was ready to return to Guyana, Jody decided to go with her, with or without Ravi. She could always pick up with Kian where they left off. Kian was fun. She had no commitment to him, and she demanded none from him. Ravi unwillingly followed. Back home, their situation returned to normal, except that Jody was inspired to get certified as a hairdresser cosmetologist. Ravi was hopeful she would pull herself out of the gossip mindset, but he was wrong because the gathering grew bigger. He had left the embassy on a good note, and upon returning, they had his position waiting for him. He was happy to continue working there. The salary was good. It was convenient. He had good benefits, but something was missing. It was on one of his down days when he overheard a most disheartening conversation between Jody and her gossiping group. Jody was playing dress up and had not realized Ravi was home from work. Jody, what are you and Ravi waiting on to start a family? How many years now that you two are married? 6? Unaware that her voice was being carried by the wind, loud and clear to Ravi's ears, he was shocked to hear her reply. Don't let his good looks fool you. He is much older than I am, and that is why we cannot have kids. She intentionally misled her friends, leading them to read between the lines. Ravi was flabbergasted. He could not believe his wife was talking to people like that about him. That would badly hurt any man's ego, and his was no different. Kelly had already destroyed all they had salvaged in Trinidad, but he still held on. Their marriage was now 8 years old, but this was the breaking point. There was no turning back now. He made up his mind, and in the following days, he quietly made arrangements to move out of Jodi's mansion and filed for a divorce. Not in her wildest dream did Jodi thought Ravi would walk away from their marriage. She took it for granted that he would stay with her because she was the best he could ever get. That she knew because both Keon and Kelly told her so. She and Keon had picked up where they left off after she returned from Trinidad, but now he had returned to the United States again. Keon was not the marrying type. He promised to return, and she agreed to see him again. And that's it for me on today's episode of Poetry and Prose. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you so much, Shahira. Shahira, I have to say, girl, you got a lengthy piece there. I don't know, something didn't go right there, you know, I feel. Cynthia, I feel you get ease up, you know. Cynthia, you had the first reading, but you had a little much shorter piece than what
Well, you know, I really don't like the sound of my voice.
Yeah.
I am happy I had a
Yeah.
shorter piece.
But
Yeah.
Shahira did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
I was riveted. I felt as if I was listening to a soap opera.
Really?
Right.
Yes, lovely job, Shahira.
Not
Thank
seeing
you
your
very
face,
much.
Shahira, not seeing you, it gave the impression that somebody's listening to the radio now. You tune into the radio and you're listening to a story. Yeah, Shahira, I have to commend you. It was quite a lengthy piece. Perhaps you need to look into this for the future, that pieces shouldn't be so given to readers now. It should be more balanced. My thinking on it. So this is the book that dealt with the successful businessman, and then so what we get in Geeta is the rhythms of marriage in this, the husband and wife, the mother-in-law. Is there extramarital relationship that's with Keon? Geeta? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. One thing I that bothered me, Gabi, isn't Gabi their child?
Yes,
Right.
but that's
But
a reflection when they went to Trinidad.
yeah.
Yeah.
But when she was on the phone now,
Mm-hmm.
was saying that they had no children.
Yes, because that's a reflection. The
Yeah.
story happened before, and then after it continued where they would make up and all of that, and then child would
Oh,
come.
all right. That was, I say, the rhythms of marriage. You
The
know?
rhythms of marriage. Yeah.
Yeah, the rhythms of marriage. Okay. Somebody wanted to come in? So we passed the hour stage. We're into 2:12 now. Let's go on to Leslie-Ann Beckles. Leslie-Ann, ready?
Yes, I am. You're muted. You're muted. Not hearing you.
Krishna, we're not hearing you.
Oh, shucks, and you know how much things I say in between there. Oh, God. And all of that loss. All right. So So Douglas Essence, yes. We welcome you. It's nice to see you and Natasha back with us for today's session. Douglas Essence is an arts activist. She is linked with the Faizabad Regional Community Complex, and she reads on their Monday virtual storytime program. And she has read in the past, and as I said, we welcome her. It's a long time I didn't see her on this program. So she will read from A Rainbow in the North. So let's go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. Happy to be here. Artie loves her school, but it was different. The entire lifestyle was different here in Trinidad, and sometimes the transition confused Artie's young mind. Today was one such day. On their way home, Ranu noticed she was awfully quiet in the backseat of the car and suddenly had a brilliant idea to cheer her up. It was mid-November and the hurricane season had ended in the Atlantic. However, that did not stop the occasional downpour. It was one of those days when it poured all day long, and now it had toned down to a moderate drizzle. As they entered the door, Ranu quickly stripped herself of her regular worksuit and jumped into shorts and jerseys. Tying her long black hair into a ponytail, she headed for the back door. "Where are you going, Mommy?" Artie asked. "Outside. Come on, let's go." "What are we going outside for? We will get wet. It is raining." Artie was puzzled. "Come on, baby, let's go." Suddenly excited, Artie grabbed her bowl and shouted, "Okay, Mommy, let's go." Enthusiastically, they both darted through the back door that led onto the blanket of green grass where the peeping evening sun reflected the prisms on the droplets, falling off the huge curry tree that stood proudly between two buildings in the compound. Artie's school offered extracurricular activities, and the one that interested her was basketball. Some time ago, Akash had erected a hoop at the top of the little incline at the back of their dwelling. The back of their building was diagonally located in front of the other one. On evenings, after home assignments were done, Artie would go out and play while Ranu prepared dinner and set her work for the next day. That was where Artie had met their neighbor, her uncle Rajesh. In front of Rajesh's house was the incline which made it easy for Artie's ball to enter his balcony whenever she played outside. And every so often, he'd come out and retrieve it for her. On this rainy evening, Rajesh sat peacefully listening to the radio while scanning through some work he had brought home with him. Suddenly, loud laughter echoed through his half-open doorway. Pong, pong, pong. The ball was in his balcony. "Uncle! Uncle!" Artie's tiny voice called. "Who are you calling, Artie?" Ranu asked. "Uncle who lives there," Artie answered innocently. Bending over, she stuck her hands between her knees and called, "Uncle!" Rajesh heard the ball bounce, but he wanted just to hear her call. He loved to hear her accent when she called him uncle. He came out on the balcony and inquired, "What's the matter, Angel?" He had his own nickname for her. "Uncle, my ball is in your balcony, please." Her adorable eyes pleaded with him to compliment her. "You seem to be having a fun time there, Angel. Is that pretty lady your mom?" he asked as he noticed Ranu standing in the background. "Yes, that's my mom, and we're having a nice time. Want to join us, Uncle?" Artie answered innocently. There was a certain adoration attached to Uncle whenever she called him. He felt a special kind of closeness towards the child who never failed to melt his heart. She was a child whom he knew only by seeing and chatting with her from the other side of the mound in the yard. He thought of another little girl, another Angel, but she called him Daddy, and wondered what she was doing at this time. "Is that all right with your mom?" he asked. Mommy is okay. Mommy, is it okay for uncle to join us? Before Ranu could answer, Arti was already nodding her head. A few minutes later, like a Greek god, Raja stepped out in shorts and a sleeveless jersey as if going to the gym. On many days when he came home from work, Arti would be on the flat of the inclined plane, and unknown to Ranu, he would stop at the foot of the mound and chat with her for a few minutes. It was on one of those days that Rajesh learned about Arti's father. My mom and I live here all alone. My dad died in a car accident when I was a tiny baby, she told him. Having the knowledge that there was no man in the family, his interest piqued, and Rajesh paid closer attention to the neighbors in front of him. The tall, slender, dark-haired beauty interested him, but he was skeptical of approaching her because his life as it was did not allow for a relationship. Now, as he played with Ranu and Arti, Rajesh's clothes was already sticking to his body, revealing his lean body under the fabric. The three of them played in the continuous drizzle until the last glimmer of sun peeking through the clouds disappeared. Arti dropped herself in a puddle of water. Game over! She exclaimed in exhaustion. Rajesh went over to join her. While they splashed and giggled, Ranu got out the water hose and sprayed them both to get them clean, since the slight drizzle at this point did not help their extreme muddiness. Their cheerful laughter continued until Rajesh reluctantly left them. The evening ended, leaving Arti satisfied, exhausted, and in a much better mood. Goal accomplished. She eventually fell asleep in front of the television. Ranu's memories were imprinted with Rajesh's affection for Arti, and she wondered how long they had known each other. She also realized that apart from Akash, there wasn't a male figure in their lives, and she wondered what effect that would have on Arti's upbringing. Rajesh missed having his daughter with him and interacting with him. Arti helped him fill a void. As he reflected on the evening's activities, he felt gratified to have those two lovely people in his life. He had been preoccupied with thoughts of Ranu throughout the night. He was fully awake now, and she was the one who occupied his mind, but he was not in a position to entertain relationship thoughts. Thank you for the opportunity to read this lovely story.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Dubla Essence. Lovely, lovely dramatic rendition there. Peter, I'm sure you enjoyed that. Let us see the sequel to that part. Hari Charan Narayan. Hari, you ready? Hari? I'd like him to unmute and get ready. Hari? Anybody could help me? Hari.
Ask him to unmute.
Right.
Yes, are you hearing me?
Yes, you see, Hari, I'll tell you something about Hari. Hari is listening from quite Mayaro, and the surf, the constant surf there has him keep asking, are you hearing me? Yes, I visited Hari the other day. It was nice. I want to just advertise, Hari has 3 books. Days Gone By, The Big Fisherman, and Heroes of Mayaro. I got this as a gratis from him when I visited him. So Hari will
Are you hearing?
Yes, we are. So Hari will go on to the sequel to that part.
Thank you.
Hari.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of Poetry and Prose. You know, I am a member of Poetry and Prose, but has become an irregular member because of a certain challenge I had. And some of you would understand my challenge. So today, we are here to honor Geeta Outar-Sirjoo, who is elevated to the Author of the Month. Geeta has 2 very powerful names, Geeta and Outar. They are very, very powerful names in the Indian diaspora. So today I am going to read a part of a book, A Rainbow in the North. The full moon, the mellow mood, the light wind all added to create a night for lovers. Caught in the moment, Rajesh suggested, let's go for a walk on the beach, Ranu, just the two of us. They ventured into the cool night air. The sea spray was much thicker now than it caused a thin layer of fog. The moonlight glistened on the sea like a secret road to heaven. A flock of nocturnal birds dived and grabbed their catch before flying to the huge rocks in the dimness to eat. Ranu was ecstatic as she observed nature at its best, and Rajesh felt an intangible connection created by Mother Nature. Wordlessly, they continued to walk in the direction of the gigantic mansion that had replaced the resort of some years ago. Rajesh wondered what would happen if I would hold her hand. He was unaware that she was hoping that he would do exactly that. The owners of the mansion were having a party, it seemed, and the music carried by the wind added even more romance to the scenery, creating a bigger atmosphere for the couple on the beach. They continued to stroll in comfortable silence. Conversation seemed unnecessary. At intervals, Rajesh noticed her smiles and were replaced by a look of melancholy. Then they changed again. Every so often, she'd stop and pick up some half-hidden shells in the sands, some that her creative mind could use, and put them into her pocket, while others she cast back into the sea. Watching them being dragged into the water and disappearing in the moonlight. A bittersweet feeling continued to linger as they walked. Ramesh was again tempted to take her hand. There was a lot he did not know about her, because even though she remained a cipher to him, he knew without any doubt that he was madly in love with her. The realization warmed his heart, and with that came courage. He reached out and took her hand. He could feel her fingers trembling, but Ranu did not resist. As they walked on, Rajesh pointed to a spot that held some cherished memories for him. See that spot there? He asked as they came closer to a dug-up area. Right about here, my favorite time of the year to be here is the summer vacation. It coincides with the nesting season for turtles. One night there was an enormous one that came up here to lay, right here on this spot. I'll never forget that summer. Mia, Rajiv, and we stayed up all night to make sure all was well with her until the magnificent creature went back into the water. Then we got some old fishing nets, some that washed up on shore, and some that Ulrich got from the fisher folks down in the village. We were still building a protective fence around the nest when the sun came up the next day. Ranu imagined the three siblings in their younger days as they protected the eggs from predators. A contagious happiness glowed on Rajesh's face as he reminisced. That summer, we spent 2 extra weeks. None of us wanted to leave before they hatched, but we had to leave them. Ulrich kept watch until it was time for them to hatch, and he informed us of the everyday happenings. When he thought it was time my dad arranged for us to come back up, and I cannot explain the feeling when we saw them hatched. We helped them into the water, and watched them leave. Mia even said a prayer for them as he hoped to see them again sometime. We all felt to see them again, and Mia cried. Even now, whenever she sees a turtle, she wonders if that was the one we saved. Ranu felt her heart expanding in her chest with love for this man. The more she heard, the more she loved him. If only his heart was ready to love again. She turned towards him, touching his face gently. She said, "That was a lovely thing to do. Thank you for sharing. I'll always remember that." Then she stood on tiptoes and invitingly kissed him on the lips. Rajesh was overwhelmed. He had wanted to kiss her again, and ever since the night of the show, but he had been afraid of moving too fast. Captured in the moment, Rajesh held her tightly as he returned the kiss with intense passion. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of an approaching engine brought them back to reality. What would she say? Yes? Rajesh wondered. And Ranu thought, if only he could forget about his ex-wife and see how much I love him. Our kiss was just a moment of passion for him, but I would cherish this moment forever. And I have come to the end.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you for reading that romantic piece there. Harry, I feel it's not a stutter when you talk about kissing and thing, you know. Yeah. So from Mayaro, we go to Canada. Heather is all set. Heather?
Yes, here I am.
Right, Heather, and from novel, we go to a short story. Heather is our Canadian connection, one of, Frank is another. And she comes from the distinguished Lalku family, and she has written a number of books. Over to you, Heather, with
Well,
your...
thank you. This is a privilege to be reading Geeta's work. I'm reading from Lone Survivor, which was discussed earlier in the introduction and the interview. Here we go, Lone Survivor. Fully aware of the danger, Chris was beginning to cry. Uncle Jack go Gary back to safe grounds, boy, Robbie assured Chris, and himself also. Nothing can happen to him. The sea is like a house. He know it inside out, Ram offered. The turbulence at the mouth of the Demerara River had taken the lives of many people they had all known. The younger ones had heard stories, but Jack had lived through some, and they counted on his experience to keep them safe. He revved the engine and held it straight at full throttle, guiding the boat in a northwesterly course with dexterity. The three youths looked at the captain in awe. Their eyes never left him as he struggled with the raging current. He was their hero. The 45 HP Yamaha cried out for mercy after 15 minutes of driving and dragging the long net behind. At last, the surface began to calm, and Jack began to slacken his hold on the throttle. Finally, they were out of danger. Lady Luck was with them, as their nets were still in proper order. Collectively, they all breathed a sigh of relief. But Chris and Robbie, still recovering, sat on the icebox for a long time. A soft whisper escaped Chris. This is we livelihood. How many more risks like this we will get to face in this life? It was long after lunch when they were allowed time to eat. Not one was in any mood to eat anyway. The earlier happenings were replaying constantly in their minds. But to eat they must, because soon enough they would be pulling in their seine, and that would last until midnight. That was when they would prepare food again. That was when the time would permit for it to be prepared. Rest was more important at this time. They all sat to eat their meal of bread and cheese once again. The overhead sun bleached down with ferocity in the unusual December weather. The youth sought out the small cabin for a little rest that time, and they waited for the upcoming heavy task of clearing the net. Jack sat on the gunwale for a while. The humidity was stifling for him, and he reverted to the stern of the boat. He turned and twisted for a while, still uncomfortable. He shifted himself from the bench in a fetal position to the floor of the vessel. Despite the comfort there, the coolness brought sleep almost immediately. A couple of hours later, Jack's cramped body woke him up. The position of the sun told him it was now after 6 in the evening. He got out and stretched his body, then sat on the gunwale of the stern. He shook his head and smiled as snores came from the younger ones in the cabin like a unique symphony. The sky had begun to change, and Jack breathed in deeply as he admired the art of the painter's masterpiece. It was nature at its best. In the distance were two sporadic beams coming through the pinkish clouds, casting a spotlight on a pod of porpoises playing against the backdrop of the sunset on the horizon, a moment that cannot be compared. One of the few privileges of being a fisherman. Jack's moment was interrupted a few minutes later as everyone was fully awake and ready to work again. After a light snack, they began to haul in their catch. Ram and Chris pulled and dropped the net. Robbie and Jack opened and cleared. Every once in a while, Jack would empty the container into the icebox, then rejoined Robbie. Their net had captured well, not what they expected, but satisfying. Their sense of satisfaction was invigorating. Uncle Jack, you know what we want to buy for Christmas? No, what? We want to buy goods and want a new set of house blind for Ma. When it's Christmas time, she doesn't want to dress up the house nice. Talkative Chris was still full of energy, especially in his mouth. Finally, the last of their catch was packed away in the icebox and the lid reset. It was almost 6 hours later when their job of clearing the net was done. Jack get himself up for the drive to safer ground to spend the night. Jack knew that he was too far out in the open ocean. He was on heightened alert. Without saying anything because of this morning's incident, he accelerated the speed. At this depth, trawlers came out in abundance. They were like a moth to the flame when shrimping was good. The captain of the trawler decided to venture closer to the shallows. On many occasions, their nets would entangle with that of the common fisherman, and terrible battles would ensue in many cases. They threw caution to the wind, causing serious bodily injuries due to violent outbreaks. Jack thought to himself that they did not encounter any other fishing vessel except the one on their first night, and that was 8 days ago, but he was still being cautious. Jack was all geared and faced inland for safety that night. They had to cross the turbulence at the beginning of the Demerara River again, where the roughness meets the open sea. Once again, Jack's experience and skills were questioned by the elements of the sea. Sea sprays bathed his face rigorously. His rain-coated body bobbed jerkily as he maneuvered the Prince Edward into the midst of a battle with the oceanic enormity once again. The boys looked on with caution and admiration at the same time. Jack had definitely earned his badge of heroism as he took them back into safety. The 3 young ones swore that Jack had some kind of supernatural powers. It was after midnight, just as Jack predicted, when they reached a safe spot for the night. He was grateful to finally reach the spot and kill the engine. Robbie, throw out the anchor, boy. Robbie obeyed and launched the anchor overboard. The rope grew taut, the anchor grappled, and everyone got up from their now relaxed position to prepare food under the quick descent of the last quarter moon and the lone kerosene lamp. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you. The theme of survival, heroism, mastery of the Demerara River and the ocean. So now we go to the dream novel. I'm sure everybody anxious to hear what this dream novel is all about. We will start with The pieces are not balanced. Natasha has a shorter piece and Paul Moti has a longer piece. So we go with Natasha. Natasha, you ready?
Yes, I am.
I associate Natasha with Douglas Essence. Natasha, when I first met Natasha on this forum, she really stunned me with her dramatic rendition. So Natasha is an arts activist. She too is linked with the Faizabad Regional Community Complex and reads for the virtual story time on Mondays. Natasha, it's all yours with this dream novel, girl.
Yes, fortunate disaster. Smita. Smita floated along in the darkness. She heard nothing but silence, a sound even scarier than the chaos and confusion that occurred earlier. The strong current that washed her thus far had subsided to a medium pace now, had pulled her against a huge rock. With a struggle, she pulled her bruised and battered body to the top. I'm much better now. I'm out of that scary water, she sighed. But her relief did not last for very long, as her long garara, saturated in mud, clung to her legs. Putting one foot in front of the other, she tripped on the wet fabric and fell face first onto the hard surface. She hit her head extremely hard. The sharp pain surged through her body, and in the darkness of the night, she drifted off into an unconscious world. The rain continued beating down on her tiny, fragile frame. Emerging out of her unconsciousness hours later, Smita awoke with an immense pain about her body. The heaviness in her head reminded her of her fall earlier. Silence was petrifying. She had no idea what time of night it was, or how long again before daylight, if the clouds allowed the sun to peep through. It was without doubt the longest night of her life. She was unable to tell what was happening around her. She wondered what happened to the babies who cried earlier. Did they go to sleep? She asked herself, and shivered as she thought of what else could have caused their crying to stop. The sounds of cows, goats, sheep, and people yelling were also a distant sound that resounded in her aching head. Objects appeared vaguely in the water all about her as she slowly regained full consciousness. There was a loud splash that alerted her and brought her to the awareness that the vague objects were silhouettes, were people heading towards the rock in desperation for safety. They were obviously tired, but the will to survive propelled them forward. They fought and pulled and tugged and clawed at each other like territorial animals. A ghastly looking man, wet and shivering and unmistakably angry at who or what no one knew, shouted ferociously at Smita. He grabbed her by her foot and dragged her on the rough surface of the rock, adding more bruises to her already battered body. He then maliciously tossed her fragile body into the repulsively cold water again. In the entire hullabaloo, Smita could not get back onto the rock as others arrived fighting. Back in the mysterious water, she allowed her tired body to float gently downstream again, leaving the chaotic crew behind, scuffling with each other. The continuous darkness, along with the shivering cold, mud-thickened, brown, foul-smelling water, felt like glue on her skin. It created an atmosphere of trepidation, especially when rats and other scary creatures climbed on her partially submerged body, seeking dry ground. Courageously, she continued her quest for higher ground. A mournful cry escaped her lips as the evening's events replayed in her mind. Raoul, where are you? She whispered. The monsoon season always began spectacularly. Festivities commenced with prayerful processions as devotees walked around from village to village, pleadingly chanting to the rain gods for a tolerable season. In these rural parts, Hinduism dominated the colorful celebrations. There were fun-filled games where young and old alike participated. The young ones showcased their talent with singing and dancing. Weeks before the season began, while the blistering sun beat down on the parched ground, all creations expectantly awaited the thick, dark monsoon clouds that converted the blinding midday into twilight. Cows and goats, too tired to move in the heat of the day, found themselves the slightest shade to hide from the big ball of fire as they consumed their energy. However, the gray swells of incessant water came sooner than expected. The storms made a grand entrance as they came, interspersing semi-darkness with lightning, which surrealistically illuminated everything. The clouds growled and roared. The first few drops of rain splattered down and then were quickly followed by forceful torrents. The remarkable season usually lasted for 3 to 4 months every year. The beginning of the season was Smeeta's favorite time. But as it prolonged, the wetness became intolerable. For days on end, the volleys of rain persisted into months. It never failed to amaze her as it poured onto the open fields, lifting the dry odor of the sun-kissed earth. Nature in all its glory brought with it an intangible bond that added to the festivities as villagers expressed gratitude in advance to the heavens above. It was a season also when young lovers snuck a chance at courtship under the attentive eyes of their parents. A welcoming sense of warmth spread through her shivering body as she remembered just days before, Rahul, filled with youthful desires, took her by the hand and whisked her away from crowds across the bridge to their favorite big oak tree. Hugging her tenderly, he whispered caressingly in her ear, "Someday, too, you will be my wife." And he sealed his sincere commitment with a clumsy, childish kiss. Smeeta swayed for a moment, steadying herself, and she bashfully ran away. Adrift in the slowly emerging grayness, Smeeta wondered what had happened to her family. Her only sister, Ritu, was on her way to her friend's house at the time that Smeeta left to meet Raoul. Pa was tending to the goats. Ma, as usual, was preparing dinner for the family. The grayness now notified her that it was daytime, for the customary dusk of the season was evident. Like an oasis in the desert, there stood an island in the huge body of water. Hidden strength from within her took her to the water's edge. Up on reaching there, she noticed a woman lying close to the bank with her face in the ground. Thinking that she fell, Smeeta leaned over to help her. She turned her over with a struggle, An incredible pain like none other she had ever experienced ripped through her. Tiny baby, tied to its mother's chest, lips blue from the coldness, laid lifeless on her still body. Her heart wrenched to see the mother's arms clinched protectively around her baby as her lifeless eyes stared into the great beyond. Looking around her, a sense of helplessness engulfed her as she realized that she was lucky to be alive. People and animals, dead and alive, floated all around. A white shroud of mist rose from the coldness of the continuously rising water. Seeta stood frozen to the reality before her eyes. A throbbing pain brought to her attention the blood oozing out of her left foot. Examining her calf, she gasped at the long, deep, sharp cut that met her eyes. She knew a cut that severe required medical attention, which was just a dream here, wherever she was. The floods near Seeta Lane extended rapidly throughout Bihar. Darbanga's rural villages were out of reach except by helicopter and would take days or weeks before anything reached her. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Seeta, for allowing me to read your awesome story.
Thank you,
very much.
Auntie Natasha. That's the name she goes by for Fertile Story Time. So up next, Moti will give us this sequel to this story where two persons in a relationship torn apart by Nitya, in this case the monsoon. So we have had settings of Guyana, Trinidad, and now India. Moti, before you hand it over to you, I have to say this is Moti's latest Kahani work. He's a man of the Kahani series. He's a stalwart of poetry and prose and long-standing member. Over to you, Moti, to give us the sequel. What happened to Seeta and Rahul?
Okay, thank you, Krishna. My piece is titled Fortunate Disaster, Chapter 6, The Reunion. Madhupura, Murli Ganj, and Darbhanga were the worst affected districts in that monsoon disaster. And every time after that, whenever neighboring Nepal released its excess water, they were flooded again. Even though there were many floods after the disaster that separated Seeta and himself, there was none as horrendous as that. Nevertheless, the people were left with a bitter feeling towards the responsible authorities. That was one of the reasons that Rahul was inspired to be a politician, so he could make a difference. Having tied up all their loose ends, Rahul and Eden were left with 2 days and a night to stay. Mr. Kishore arranged for Rahul to visit his father in Sidhauli. The helicopter took him to Patna, the nearest airport in Darbhanga. From there, he drove to the school after checking in to the hotel Shanyanka, which was a 2-hour drive away from his rural hometown. The morning sun was already high upon that beautiful April day. Happy boyhood memories flowed through his mind as he drove past the endless sea of rice fields where the harvesters reaped. Rahul drove slowly on the dirt road in the middle of the fields as he enjoyed the loud, cheerful chattering, followed by thrills of laughter coming from the nearby fields. The women, dressed in traditional long skirts and long sleeve shirts for protection from the sun, had what seemed like a special choreographed dance. They move in unison, comparable to the efficiency and rhythm of a well-oiled machine. The curved knives hooked at the roots of the grass-like plants and cut with the same motion. They gathered several cut plants in one hand, stepping forward with each cut and dropped for the crew behind to pick up and pack on the ox-drawn cart to take to the storehouse, a sight that Rahul cherished. From his memories, he had an artist's sketch of Seeta, which he showed to the people everywhere. Don't waste your time, child. That was so many years ago. Do you think she still look like that? Those were a few of the harsh remarks he received from some people. Rahul was never discouraged. His heart told him that Smita was alive somewhere, and he believed. And so he looked for his Me Too everywhere he went. Others have looked, but this was his first visit back to his village, and he was personally looking for the missing piece of his art. Finally, he came to the end of the village, where his old school stood faithfully, and nostalgia engulfed him. He knew Baba had survived the disaster. The crew had told him so. When his father refused to leave Darbhanga, Rahul arranged that Baba, through the charity team for his father, to rebuild his hut nearer to him, since the silt had destroyed the fertile ground where he used to live. His father's occupation was planting vegetables for the market and rearing goats for their milk. Since the flood, he did not rear goats again, and gardening was now only a pastime for him. Baba looked out of his little kitchen at the back of the school as Rahul's jeep came to a halt. He walks towards Rahul, who slowly came out of the vehicle, clasped his hand together with an emotional "Namaste, Babaji." Baba recognized a familiar voice, but the person in front of him deceived his eyes. "Namaste." Squinting his eyes, he asked, "Tum kaun ho, beta?" "My Rahul, Baba, Rahul Ganpat Kumar." It was a long time since he used that name. Ever since his name was misspelled at the refugees registration office, he used the name Rahul Kumar. "Rahul Beta, Rahul Beta." He greeted Rahul with a bear hug. "Hey Bhagwan, thank you. Thank you for blessing my eyes." Rahul hugged him with tears rolling down the old man's face. When he finally let go of Rahul, he limply ran in excitement to the back of the school, calling out, "Suraj, Suraj, come. Come look. Your son Rahul. Rahul has come home." Rahul followed eagerly. He was at his father's hut before he left his door, bending to touch his feet, as was the culture. Overwhelmed, Rahul could contain his feelings no more. He held on to his father that he had not seen for so many years. "Papa, Papa, mere Papa." And they hugged each other in an embrace that spoke much more than words could ever describe, each nursing his own emotions as they wept openly. Baba, aware of tears rolling on his cheeks, unconsciously reached up and dried them away. Eventually, his father held him at arm's length for a better look. Rahul, beta? Rahul, is that really you? Touching his face to make sure, for he had dreamed of this day so many times before. Now that it was here, he wondered if his dreams followed him into the conscious world of reality. He could not believe that this well-groomed young man was his very own son who stood before him. Rahul seemed even taller than 6'4" in a pair of white jeans and a sky blue polo jersey that fitted snugly across his chest and arms. The fingers of his father hesitated on a scar on Rahul's face, but before the question could leave his lips, Rahul answered, "That's a long story, Papa." "I am sure you have many stories to tell, son." Suddenly, all his fears resurfaced, and he held his son in his arms again and thanked the heavens for bringing him back. Baba stood and watched this happy reunion. He unconsciously reached up to wipe the tears off his face again. He then scurried away to give father and son some privacy to catch up. But the jitters of wanting to know more overtook him. No sooner was he returning with a glass of milk in one hand, a delicious plate of puri and aloo sabzi in the other. Breakfast was long gone, but Rahul was happy to treat his taste buds with foods that they had yearned for. His father's hut was about the size as when he lived in the village, but suddenly Rahul felt flustered. Without being obvious, he asked, "Papa, Baba, can we sit under the Ashoka tree?" Over the years, that tree had stood the test of time, and with the help of the children, Baba had built a box around the big root and filled it with soil that soon flattened and became a seating area for the chatterboxes. His father watched him without blinking as he put each morsel of food in his mouth, for fear that this was a dream. He was enjoying it and did not want to wake up. Rahul offloaded bags and boxes of presents he had brought for his father and Baba. In a childlike manner, they opened them one by one. Their faces beamed with pleasure as they saw all the new clothes, sheets, medicines, and household apparatus which came from a land so far away, all packed courtesy Eden. Rahul took off his gold watch, the first item he had bought for himself on his first shopping trip to London, and put it on his father's hand. The old man stared in amazement at the watch as tears filled his eyes. He never thought of being the owner of something so luxurious, and Rahul was sure that his father would wear it every day, if only to remember him. Baba pored over the many books he found in one of the boxes. They talked for hours on end, happily lapping all of Rahul's tales of his adventures since he left home. Then Smita's name was mentioned again. His father finally got up and walked around to stretch his cramped legs, as arthritis was a huge health issue for him now. Rahul asked, "Baba, has Smita ever returned to the village?" All day long, Baba waited for Rahul to say something about Smita, having noticed earlier that every time Smita's name was mentioned, Rahul evaded the topic and swallowed hard. He knew if there was any news about his beloved, Baba would know. Rahul stared at Baba intently and saw emotions wash over his face one after the other. And then his answer came. "Son, I always thought she was with you, and that's when I saw you, and that when I saw you, I would see her also." The sadness in his voice ached Rahul's overwhelmed heart even more. With his head downcast, so Baba could not see the tears that threatened, he whispered, Baba, I've searched and searched for her on the computer, in India, in England, on the World Wide Web. Then thoughtfully shaking his head negatively, he added, I can't find her, but I feel me too is alive. I cannot give up. Baba watched him helplessly, pained by the tears brimming in his eyes. Finally, his whispers continued. I cannot move on until I know what has happened to her. I love her, Baba. I have always loved her. Uncertain, Baba replied, but son, if she was alive, she would have surely visited to let us know that all was well with her. Silence fell, and they continued to sit under the tree. Finally, that dreaded moment reached. His father and Baba stood beside each other with bittersweet feelings as they watched him get into the jeep for his drive back to the hotel before darkness fell. Suraj remembered another day 8 years ago when he allowed his son to go. Suraj's heart ached as much now as it did then. He remained under the Ashoka tree, nursing his pains until the sun had long gone to rest, until Baba finally persuaded him to go to his hut. Tears burned at the back of Rahul's eyes as he drove off. His emotions were on a roller coaster today. He couldn't get his mind off Smita. Oh, me too. Where are you, my darling? He whispered, as vivid memories invaded his thoughts, passing through familiar places where they roamed as childhood sweethearts. He was now an alien in the same village where he wandered as a boy. He stopped at where the bridge used to be, and he could hear Smita's laughter and visualize her in their younger days. He cringed as he remembered the instant the bridge was washed away. He saw himself and the tsunami before him. Me too. That was the last time Rahul saw of her. What happened to my love? Thank you, Krishna, and thank you, Geeta, for allowing me to read this story.
Thank you, Murthy.
In the beginning,
Very much.
I was a little, how shall I put it? Misdirected by the title reunion. I say, well, oh God, they're going to be reunited. But I think that Geeta meant to keep us guessing, and that the reunion was really between son, father, and headmaster.
Yeah. Well,
Before I go, I want to make a little comment, I was particularly impressed by the passage about the women reaping the rice. I come from Pinal, and I grew up in the rice field and all that. So I remember similar scenes in my childhood. And another thing she talked about walking through the village, that what the ladies used to do up to just a few years ago in my village in Gopi Trace there. They used to walk through the village with a little drum and a little tray and singing songs. And we used to collect donations to have an annual puja before planting began. So once more, Geeta, thank you. And Krish, if you indulge me just 1 minute again, I want to ask everybody that on the 30th of September, Saturday, 30th of September, at the Debe Library, I'll be launching my book, Nani or Aji or Nani Kahanis, and I want to ask everybody to try and attend in person, and we'll have it on Zoom also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mut. Yes, Gersha, I want some guidance here. We have reached 3 o'clock. I want to give Geeta a chance to respond to these readers who read from her works. Vishnu for the interview, Cynthia, Haricharan, Shahira, Leslie Ann, Heather, Moti, and Natasha. I thank you all for reading. Gersha?
Hi.
Is it okay? Is it okay to let Geeta respond?
Yes, certainly. Certainly. I want to add to Mutilal's point because
Yes.
I was looking through some things last night and I found book 1, book 2, and book 3. So he has 4 books now.
Yeah.
So those that are going to the launch, bring your books for him to sign. Certainly, Krishna. If anyone needs to leave, you certainly feel free to. I know certain persons have to get lunch around this time, but those that can stay, I appreciate it. I would love to hear from Geeta.
Okay, so can I take the floor now?
Yes, we are seeing
Yes,
you.
Geeta.
We're hearing you.
It's all yours.
Okay. I just want to thank everyone. Thank you all, Poetry and Prose, for the opportunity. I'm really honored to be the author of the month. And I would like to thank all the readers who did justice to my writing, every single one. I want to say a special thank you to them. And thank you, Gersha, for arranging, organizing everything that goes with today. Thank you, Mr. Vishnu. You did not ask me hard questions. And thank you very much.
My pleasure. RT did a lot of the planning as well. So I just want to say thank you to RT because she did the whole program. She coordinated the work. So
yeah, well, not
made
forgetting
everything
you,
look pretty.
Ms. RT, not forgetting you. Thank you for all the arrangements. I hope I did not forget anybody else.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
It's our pleasure. We love celebrating you, and I love your work. It's filled with drama.
Thank you. I think that's why the producer picked up Rainbow in the North. He loved the drama.
Okay.
What I would have liked though is some feedback from, you know, what you all think about the story, what I could have improved, and what, you know, what was good and what was bad about it.
Can I say that could come from, do you have an email address? If you have your email address, Gersha, you could pass on the email address to members who are willing to do that.
I
right?
certainly can.
Can do that.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
if you attend any of our regular meetings as well, we do give feedback.
Yeah.
Author of the month, though, we try to just celebrate the author and their work.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, I'll try, but the Sundays are sometimes very, very hectic for me. So I'll try on the next meeting to be there.
No problem. I'll send out the work to everyone in an email and ask for feedback. If you want to send me certain questions you want to ask for certain pieces, you can as well. We can collate that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Gersha, you can close up now.
All right.
I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Krishna, for your work
I am
today.
getting my lunch bell be wrong.
Okay, I couldn't remember if it was you or Vishnu.
But
I know
ringing the bell.
I know that one of you guys always have to go to lunch. I don't want to get the wife upset.
I am one, definitely.
To everyone that attended, this is the 3rd of September, 2023. Thank you so much for attending our Author of the Month meeting. To our author of the month, thank you for allowing us to read your work, and we look forward to seeing more of you. The meeting is
Thank you.
dismissed. I'm going to close off our live now. Bye all.
Bye. Thanks again.
Yeah, bye.